Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Cell Culture 101. Today we're going to talk about something that's absolutely essential for successful experiments: how to seed cells evenly. Now, this might sound simple, but trust me, getting an even distribution of cells is one of those foundational skills that can make or break your results. Uneven seeding can lead to all sorts of headaches, overcrowded spots, sparse areas, and even biased data. So, if you've ever wondered how to avoid these issues, you're in the right place. Before we jump into the actual process of seeding, let's take a moment to talk about the cell culture containers we typically use. You've probably worked with tea flasks, petri dishes, or multi-well plates, right? Each of these has a specific surface area, and because of that, the volume of media and the number of cells you seed need to be adjusted accordingly. For example, a T25 flask has a surface area of 25 square centimeters, and you'd typically add about 5 milliliters of media and seed around 1.25 million cells. On the other hand, if you're working with a 6-well plate, each well has a much smaller area, just 9.6 square centimeters, so you'd only need 2 to 3 milliliters of media and about 480,000 cells. Does that make sense? Essentially, for each container, there's a sweet spot for how much media to add and how many cells to seed. Too much or too little, and you're setting yourself up for uneven growth. I've included a quick cheat sheet for the most commonly used containers, so feel free to pause and take a closer look if you need to. And here's another thing. It's not just about the numbers. Cell size also matters. If you're working with larger cells, you might need to seed fewer of them, and if they're smaller, you might need to adjust upwards. The key here is to observe your cells and tweak the seeding density as needed. Like I said, there's a sweet spot, but you have to make small adjustments depending on the type of cells you're working with. Alright, so now that we've covered the basics, let's get into the actual process of seeding cells. How do you make sure they're spread out evenly? Well, the first thing to focus on is your cell suspension. You want to make sure it's properly resuspended before you start pipetting. If you've ever seen clumps of cells floating around, that's a big red flag. To fix that, simply pipette up and down gently, don't rush it. This breaks up any clumps and ensures you've got a nice, uniform suspension. Next, remember to mix your cell suspension between each pipetting step. This is especially important if you're working with a multi-well plate. Cells have this annoying tendency to settle at the bottom of the tube, and if you're not mixing regularly, your first few wells might end up with too many cells, while the last ones are almost empty. A quick swirl or gentle pipette mix can save you from that hassle. Now, when you're actually pipetting into your dish or well plate, take it slow. Don't just squirt the media in like you're in a rush. Move the pipette tip in a controlled zigzag or circular motion. This helps spread the cells across the surface evenly. And once you're done, there's a simple trick. Gently tap the plate or flask side to side. Not too hard, though. You don't want to slosh media everywhere. This little tap helps the cells settle evenly before you put them in the incubator. Finally, it's always a good idea to check under the microscope after you've seeded your cells. Take a quick look at a few wells or dishes and see how things look. If you notice uneven distribution, you can fix it early before the cells attach to the surface. It's a small step, but it can save you a lot of trouble later on. And that's it. Seeding cells evenly isn't as complicated as it might seem once you get the hang of it. Just remember, start with a good suspension, mix frequently, pipette carefully, and check your work under the microscope. Following these steps will help you get consistent, reliable results every time. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Cell Culture 101. If you found these tips helpful, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more cell culture tips and tricks. And, of course, if you've got your own favorite seeding hacks or questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you next time.